Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Saturday, July the 29th, 2023. Today I want to talk about two people who have been in the news recently. The first person is Mitch McConnell. He is the US Senate Minority Leader. So he's a Republican, and he's a really important person. Over the years, as a senator, he has been very uncompromising, pushing for conservative causes. You know, he was until recently Senate Majority Leader when the Democrats took control of the Senate. He became obviously the Senate Minority Leader. He was very much part of the campaign to push conservative justices into the Supreme Court with great success. He is an advocate of gun rights, and he understands the system, and overall he's been very effective. But there's now a question mark about his health. I think in March he had a fall or something. I think he broke a rib or something like that, and he had concussion. I think earlier on there have been other incidences, and the most recent incident was on Wednesday when he was giving a press conference and he became lost for words. He just got frozen. The words just didn't come out of his mouth, and he was just standing there, I think, for something like 20 seconds or 18 seconds, and just doing nothing. We don't know what happened. In the end, I think he was ushered away. And there's been a lot of speculation about why he suddenly became lost for words. Some people were suggesting that he had a stroke, a very, very minor stroke, but a stroke nonetheless. That was one possibility. Other suggestions is just dehydration. But yeah, so this would be of concern, but such an important person, their health would appear to be in decline. I suppose 81, he's even older than Joe Biden, but really 81 is not that old. So there's no reason why an 81-year-old shouldn't be able to function at the top level of American politics. But in his case, there do seem to be a few problems, and his chart is something I do want to look at, even though I do not have a time of birth for him. I mean, he's a Pisces, February the 20th, 1942, but maybe some people have got a time of birth, but I can't find his time of birth. The other person I want to look at is someone I'm not remotely interested in, but I'm going to look at him anyway, and that is Tom Cruise. The Daily Mail had a article about him, and it was talking about a book that's recently been written, and in which Tom Cruise was described as an egocentric control freak. I have no idea whether he's an egocentric control freak. That sounds a bit extreme. But I do want to look at that possibility in terms of his horoscope. Now, if you look at Tom Cruise's horoscope in some websites, you'll see that he has a time of birth, something like 3 in the morning, or 4 in the morning, something like that. But I think the most reliable source basically says no, there is no time of birth. His Rodden rating is an X. X means no given time of birth. We've only got the day of birth. So I will be looking at Tom Cruise's midday chart, because that is the best estimate of where his planets are. But before I look at Mitch McConnell and Tom Cruise, I am going to look at the position of the planets for today, which is Saturday, July the 29th, 2023. You know, when I say these things, I'm often afraid of freezing up myself. So, you know, we can talk about Mitch McConnell freezing up, but I could freeze up at any moment. Now, there he is. Yeah, on the top right, Mitch McConnell. It's quite some smile, isn't it? I mean, you know, I know Americans are supposed to smile a lot. You know, this is this big thing. You know, we know non-Americans have a stereotype of Americans as just smile, this big smile, lots of teeth. That smile is I don't know how American that is. He doesn't. I don't know. It's a very strange smile. You're not going to get any smiles from me. My teeth are not good enough to smile. You certainly wouldn't want a big smile from me. You certainly don't want to see. You don't want to look at my teeth. Yeah, I've got English teeth. That's the way it is. That's another stereotype about the English. Anyway, let's look at today's positions. So we have a trine aspect between the moon in Sagittarius, it's still in Sagittarius, trine Venus in Leo. This trine, I would have said, is very fortunate. You know, the moon in Sagittarius is an optimistic, larger-than-life position. Far sign, Sagittarius. Trine Venus in Leo, another far sign. So, in terms of our social life, you know, things are starting to move. It's a great time for making contact with people. And things are made even better by the fact that the moon is applying to a trine of the North Node in Aries. And so Venus is trine the North Node in Aries. So you've actually got a grand trine, a grand, fiery grand trine involving Moon, Venus, and the North Node. So as far as the North Node is concerned, you know, we often hear that the North Node is connected with karma and, you know, where we're going to, where we're coming from. But, you know, the German astrology schools, you know, particularly the Hamburg school, but also Reinhold Ebertin, you know, the author of Combination of Stellar Influences, they see the node as being about contacts, perhaps networking, the people we meet. So with Moon, Venus, North Node in this grand trine, it is a great time for making contacts, for networking, just being in touch. If you can, you know, if you have a chance to go to a party, something else like that, gatherings, it's a really good time to meet people. I'm not saying that it's going to be wonderfully dramatic, but there should be enough going on in terms of your social life to make it worthwhile. So maybe you can aim to make one new friend today, or a minimum of one new friend, or perhaps one new contact if you're business-minded. The only warning I would give is that the hypothetical planet Hades is conjunct the Mars-Jupiter midpoint. The Mars-Jupiter pair is very high energy. It likes to be doing things like all the time, and it's where do we put our energy? And if we put our energy into sort of a Hades area, that could be a problem. You know, Hades is about criminality, sleaze, the underside of society. So, you know, if we go to the wrong parties, meet with the wrong people, then we might be tempted to put our energy into the wrong areas, and we might then get ourselves into trouble. So don't overdo it, and be a bit careful who you mix with. Don't mix with criminal elements or people who've got a track record of being sleazy. Now, as far as my forecasts for the 12 signs are concerned, as usual, I have done them. And so here we go. These are my star sign forecasts for Saturday, July the 29th, 2023. Aries. It doesn't take much to make other people happy. Just be yourself and show as much enthusiasm and sparkle as possible. But excitement can manifest in many forms, and just because someone has been boring in the past doesn't mean that they will be boring in the future. Current travel plans might be unrealistic. Taurus. The moon makes a trine aspect to Venus. So today you'll receive plenty of emotional support, not just from other people, but from your environment and your memories. There's also the possibility that in relationships the emotional pace picks up quickly, but don't believe everything your friends tell you. Gemini. Sometimes Geminis can be thrown off course. They're moving in one direction when all of a sudden they're presented with a brand new suggestion which seems very exciting, and certainly more exciting than their current plans. But it is a time when you need to maintain your focus, and out of the blue ideas should be treated with great caution. Cancer. There are things that need to be done which mightn't be to your taste. You don't fully understand what's required of you, and you can't be bothered to ask questions. However, I think you need to be responsible. You have to list what is required of you and not daydream or procrastinate. Leo. It should be a fun Saturday, provided you don't have over-the-top expectations. The mood will be light and finding entertainment should be easy. But you have to live for the moment and not expect long-term results. This does require some realism, and you mustn't allow yourself to drift off on a cloud of fantasy. Virgo. Mercury gathers strength in your star sign, and you do feel that you understand what's going on. Yet there are certain things that are being hidden from you. We're not talking about deception, just a situation where you don't have all the facts. And it does seem that people who should know better are talking nonsense. Libra. You want to be noticed, but it feels that the world around you is going at too fast a pace. But everyone now and then comes into your field of vision, and you want to reach out to them. Well, it's not a time to be shy, and if you're spontaneous and optimistic, you'll get the attention you deserve. Scorpio. A lot of people are feeling confused and needy, but you yourself are fairly confident about the situation. You're then in a good position to lend a helping hand. It needn't take much of your time. You just have to be there to give a few minutes of good advice. If you're single, the person of your dreams may be in full view, even if you can't recognize it. Sagittarius. The moon continues moving through your star sign, so it is a time when you have a lot of freedom, when you can also meet exciting people, and this should set you up for a nice Saturday. But watch what you're walking on. The ground may not be as stable as you had expected. and one false impression could spoil the day. Capricorn. Things are quite subtle at the moment. No one wants to telegraph themselves directly, and instead they're relying on innuendo and clues. So when you meet people, even if you know them very well, you must realize that they are presenting a layered message, and the message on the surface may be a wrapper for something much more profound. Aquarius. You can spend a day on your own if you want, but this might not be the best use of your time, because at the moment the moon is aspecting other people, and these other people have a great deal to offer. They may be stubborn and opinionated, but they will have no problems expressing their true feelings. And when you've got this kind of honesty, you really should you should take advantage of it and be honest in return, and you're going to feel more connected with the world around you. Pisces. You're a hard person to pin down. You say one thing to one person, something completely different to another person. While it might be amusing, being all things to all people, there comes a point where you need to tell everyone what you want. It is a risk, because no one likes being rejected, but it may be a risk worth taking. So after that, I want to look at the I Ching, and I, as usual, threw 3 coins in the air, and I asked the question, what is Saturday going to be like for visitors to my YouTube channel? Now, the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 45, gathering together. So this is about people coming together. And in a way, well, in fact, not in a way, for sure, it seems to be pretty similar, a pretty similar message to what we were getting from the astrology. Remember, I was talking about Moon, trine Venus, trine the North Node, about going to parties, gatherings, and that kind of thing. I Ching is saying exactly the same thing. It is a time for mixing with new people, and being confident about it. You've really got nothing to lose. The only thing is, if you are socializing, I think people will gravitate towards you, but you do have to consider, what is their motive? Why are people gravitating towards you? Are they gravitating towards you because they think you're wonderful? Because they think that you're a born leader, that they can benefit spiritually and emotionally and morally from knowing you? Is that it? Or are people gravitating towards you because they're trying to gain influence? What is their motive? And this is particularly important if you are influential. If you it might appear that you've got something to offer, and people want to get to know you because of that, because of your influence. So you've got to distinguish between the two types of people. Why are they there? Why are they trying to? Why are they hanging on to you? So make that distinction if appropriate. So this hexagram of gathering together does transition. It transitions to hexagram number 16, which is enthusiasm. And so we're going to find, as the day progresses, as we meet sort of interesting people, that we're going to become really enthusiastic about some of our ideas, our projects, the future, all that kind of stuff. And I don't think that enthusiasm is going to be misplaced. You know, enthusiasm has come up, you know, I think over the last week or two, and I've always said it was an enthusiasm which is based on nothing. This enthusiasm is not based on nothing. It's very real. So if we're in touch with the right people, we've got the right helpers, the right friends. Our enthusiasm could be contagious, and this can be the basis for really successful action, perhaps over the next few days, perhaps into next week. So that's all I'm going to say about the I Ching. And so I'm now going to go back to the astrology, and I am going to look at the horoscope of Mitch McConnell. I'm going to try not to express any opinions. Do I have any opinions? I don't know. So here is his horoscope. February the 20th, 1942. I set it for midday in Sheffield, Alabama. As I've said, one of the most important people in American politics. You know, if you're American and you're not interested in politics, well, I think you should be interested in politics because it matters. If you're not in America, well, you can just, America matters. You got to know about the people who are in charge of this country. So he is a conservative politician. I mean, I don't think he was always a conservative. I think when he was much younger, I think in the 60s he was a Democrat. He was, I think he was very liberal. But clearly things have changed. And I think we can see conservatism in there with all this stuff in Taurus. He's got Mars in Taurus, he's got Saturn in Taurus, Uranus in Taurus, he's probably got the moon in Taurus. If he was born right at the beginning of the day, the moon would be in late Aries, but chances are that moon is in Taurus, in which case that is a very strong moon. The moon is exalted in Taurus. 3 degrees Taurus is its degree of sort of maximum exaltation. And, you know, Taurus is, in a way, quite literally a conservative sign. Now, that doesn't mean to say that just because you're a Taurus, that means you're a conservative. I mean, Lenin was a Taurus. Pol Pot was a Taurus. Who else? Karl Marx was a Taurus. You know, there are loads of Taurus. You know, there are some Tauran communists for you. In fact, Lenin was quite conservative, not in terms of how you running an economy, but I think he was socially quite conservative in the end. He didn't like modern art. He wanted something sort of more traditional. So if you've got someone who is a conservative politician and they've got all that stuff in Taurus, doesn't want any change, perhaps has some idea about the way things should be, some distant past, and this is the way it has to be, and we don't want to change it. And you know, that's what it means to be a conservative. Literally, it means to conserve. So there's also a lot of stubbornness with Taurus, just being absolutely persistent. You know, you think of all those battles with the Supreme Court. You know, Obama had his selection, he'd chosen, was it Merrick Garland to be a Supreme Court justice, but Mitch McConnell held out until Obama was no longer president and Trump was president, and then of course Trump chose someone who was to Mitch McConnell's liking. So yeah, there is that Taurus there. We also see a Mars-Saturn conjunction. Now, I've talked about Mars-Saturn conjunctions in in many different ways, and I've also associated it, with death and delay and destruction and whatever. But it might be in Mitch McConnell's case that this Mars-Saturn conjunction is actually about his childhood, because when he was 2 years old in 1944, he contracted polio, and he had paralysis of a leg or something like that, and it was touch and go whether he'd get cured or whatever, whether he'd be able to walk properly again. And so Mars-Saturn, you could certainly connect Mars-Saturn with paralysis, and also perhaps with scars. I mean, talking more about the psychological scars from what happened to him as a child, are probably linked to that Mars-Saturn, although, we don't have a time of birth, so it's very difficult to say how that Mars-Saturn is manifesting. So that's one possibility. Notice also that he's got a wide Mercury-Venus conjunction. Mercury-Venus conjunctions are good. They can be associated with art, they can be associated with business skill, and they can be associated with sort of communication skills in general. And it's in Aquarius, so it's a fixed sign. So Mercury, Venus is in a fixed sign. All these 4 Taurian planets, all in a fixed sign. So this man is very stubborn. And, you might say, oh, he's a Pisces. But he's got the sun in Pisces. But I don't know. I would have said he's more of a Taurus than a Pisces, actually. When you see, like Einstein, for example, Einstein, he has a reputation of being a Pisces. But if you look at Einstein's chart, he had loads of fire planets. And I mean, I don't know. I would have said, you can't just look at the sun in isolation. I don't think you could characterize Einstein as a pure Pisces. I think that you have to look at all his fire, the intuition, being able to sort of intuit, the theory of relativity in that fiery way, just knowing it. It just hits him. But sorry, I'm digressing there. But this Pisces, how is this manifesting? Okay, he has a certain amount of sensitivity. That Sun in Pisces is his only planet in a water sign. Without that Sun in Pisces, it might have been very difficult for him to operate. But because he's got that Sun in Pisces, he has a feel for the way things are going, for the mood on the ground, for people's feelings in society. That there is that. And, notice that he has got the Sun sextile the moon. Now, assuming the moon is in Taurus, now Ptolemy, around 2,000 years ago, he said that when you've got a good sun-moon aspect, like sextile, trine, whatever, it's good for getting past birth. At that time, when child mortality was extremely high. It was almost expected. It was a routine. You'd expect a lot of your children to die. And so with Mitch McConnell, he has this polio at the age of 2, and this could have led to his paralysis. I suppose it could have led to his death. But maybe the reason he was able to recover from his polio was the fact that he had a sextile between the sun and the moon. If we take a sort of Ptolemaic approach to the sun and moon, it's sun and moon. These are the 2 life-giving planets. Yesterday I was talking about the high leg, the giver of life in the chart, which is very often the sun or the moon. And so the way these are together, we shouldn't, I suppose we shouldn't write him off. But of course now, with this slip, with his frozen press conference plus his recent falls, maybe the life force is starting to weaken. But as I said yesterday, if you're trying to predict people's deaths with a chart with no time, it's a fool's errand. Not that one should be trying to predict people's deaths, but yeah, I mean, having the time of birth is really important. One other point I wanted to make about this chart is Jupiter in Gemini. Jupiter in Gemini. Jupiter doesn't work well in Gemini. This is because the moon rules Sagittarius. And so that means it's in its detriment in Gemini. Now, Jupiter is about the big idea. It's about big principles. Okay, so we know he's a conservative. He has big ideas, yeah, but about which of a conservative nature. But Jupiter in Gemini, it doesn't really work very well because Gemini is not about big ideas. It's about the little facts. And maybe this is part of his problem, maybe. Yeah, he's very effective in terms of pushing a conservative agenda. But why? It's almost like with Jupiter in Gemini, he's doing it for the sake of it, maybe. Maybe he switched from being, a sort of fairly liberal as a young man to becoming conservative. Maybe this was, maybe it was all about expedience, perhaps. Jupiter in Gemini is not, just not, perhaps finds it difficult to hold on to the big idea and gets caught up in details, and then it just becomes procedure rather than the active pursuit of a philosophy that one is really really into. So that's his chart. I wanted to look at what was going on in terms of transits. Now, I tried to look for the precise time of his getting frozen. I got some contradictory information. I mean, sorry, to put it bluntly, I couldn't be bothered. I couldn't be bothered to spend hours on the internet trawling through news sites. So let's just look at a bi-wheel for. We're going to put Mitch McConnell in the middle, and we're going to put the incident on the outside. There we go. So what's actually going on here? I think it's really not. It's not really about what is going on that particular moment where he froze up. Rather, I think it's Uranus causing some problems here. This is his Mars-Saturn conjunction, which is a point. Which Mars-Saturn can be about restriction, not being able to do all the stuff that you wanted to do. Suddenly, and then Uranus has come along. Uranus has been on his Mars-Saturn midpoint, and perhaps Uranus is about these accidents. Uranus is a planet of accidents. Mars-Saturn, it can be about death, but it can be about decay. These accidents are slowly wearing him down in terms of his health and his constitution, and so probably Uranus on his Mars-Saturn. It's going to be around for some time. It'll be around until 2024. So I think that's going to sort of undermine him. Also, he is coming up to his Uranus return. Now, we hear a lot about Saturn returns, which happen when you're around 29 or 30. But the Uranus return happens when we're approximately 84 years old, something like that. And so his Uranus is at 26 Taurus. So in a year or couple of years, he's going to have his Uranus return. And I think he's already starting to enter his Uranus return. It's a kind of entree for his Uranus return because he's got Mars, Saturn, Uranus conjunction there. So I think that is very much part of it, and matters are not helped by the fact that there's his sun in Pisces. Saturn went into Pisces. I think it went into Pisces in March. So as soon as Saturn went into Pisces, it made a conjunction to his sun, and the sun is a life force. Saturn's hit it, and so he's experiencing the aftermath of this. And Saturn is going retrograde, and so Saturn is going to go back over his sun. I think it reaches it in maybe late October, and it goes stationary direct in early November. Then it will run over his sun again. So Saturn is going to be hitting his sun a lot. He's got Saturn-Sun problems coming up. So, this may be the time that Mitch McConnell should perhaps consider getting out of politics, because I think some of these transits suggest that it's not actually going to get better. And one final thing I want to mention is his solar arc directions. So I did his solar arc directions. That means I was moving each of his planets, 1 degree for every year. So if you want to know about what's happening in his first year of life, you move all his planets 1 degree. In his 80th year of life, you move everything 80 degrees. So let's just put this next to, so we put Mitch McConnell in the middle, his and so there we have it. What I did notice, in terms of his cognitive decline, his directed, remember he's got Mars-Saturn conjunction, and his solar arc directed Mars-Saturn is currently, right now, his Mars is at 1147 Leo, his Saturn at 1241 Leo, and his Mercury is at 1148 Aquarius, so it's opposition. So, Mercury does represent your cognitive capacity. It represents how the signals are going through your brain. And I'm sort of treating Mercury in a sort of biological level. I'm not talking about it as some symbolic thing. I'm just, medical astrology is a particular field. I don't, it's not something that I particularly specialize in, medical astrology. But, he has had this Mars-Saturn conjunction by solar arc direction being opposition his natal Mercury. And I'm thinking that this might be causing sort of cognitive issues, movement issues. In theory, it's just moving past, but we have to consider the damage that's been done over the last year and so forth. So I think that is important, and it underlines what I was saying. I think for Mitch McConnell, I think it's time to get out of politics as he approaches his Uranus return. So I wanted to quickly talk about Tom Cruise. I'm not going to spend much time on it. I just wanted to just have a quick look at his horoscope. I kind of find Tom Cruise's horoscope, the only reason I might find it interesting is that he was born, I'm born on May the 30th, 1962. He's born on July the 3rd, 1962. I have my Mercury at 1953 Gemini, and he's got his Mercury at 1945 Gemini. Now, unfortunately, my Mercury is retrograde, and it's in the same sign as the sun. It's not combust, but it's under sunbeams. My Mercury is quite debilitated, even though it's in Gemini. So I'm quite jealous of his Mercury, because his Mercury is kind of going direct, and it's it doesn't have the sun in the sign. The sun is not messing it around. So probably his brain functions a lot better than mine. So Where would the ego be? Well, we don't really know where his moon's. We don't know where his moon is. These people that have got a 3 in the morning chart for Tom Cruise, that puts the moon in Cancer. But if you take a noon chart, that puts the moon in Leo. So if he had the moon in Leo, that would mean he'd have the moon and Venus in Leo. So you could say all that stuff in Leo is does suggest something of an ego, maybe. Um, yeah, he's got that would give him confidence, supposedly. But it is moon in Leo, not sun in Leo. The moon in Leo is not as confident as the sun in Leo. The moon is actually a bit fragile in Leo, not entirely confident. It has to make a special effort to be seen and heard and to feel recognized. Sun in Leo just goes and does it. So I don't know, but we don't really know where his moon sign is. So where his moon is, so that is a bit of an issue. He has got Saturn on the South Node. Yeah, so I've got Saturn on the South Node. I remember I had a friend who was into Indian astrology, and he was telling me, yeah, you got Saturn in the South Node. It's not surprising your work career, it's a disaster. Saturn on the South Node, it's just not going to work. I think it's a problem, maybe, I don't know, but he certainly hasn't got a problem. Certainly hasn't got a problem with his Saturn on the South Node. Saturn is in Aquarius. It rules Aquarius. It's a good place for Saturn. It is square Neptune. One wonders what sort of fears are there with Saturn square Neptune. So I've certainly got, you see, I have a Saturn square Neptune. So the fears, Saturn wants to control, but Neptune wants to transcend, and so that's a bit of an issue. He clearly is into his Scientology. I think he's still a big fan of the Scientology religion. That would perhaps be his Neptune, but Saturn is trying to control. Control. Oh well, egocentric control freak. I don't know. Can you pin down Neptune? But as far as the Scientology is concerned, you could also see that he's got a grand trine in water. So there you see he's got Jupiter in Pisces, trine Neptune in Scorpio, trine the Sun in Cancer. So there's a grand trine in water. Now that's probably very useful if you want to be an actor, because as an actor, you can't have a big ego and be a successful. You've got to put your ego to one side, surely, to be an actor. You've got to get into the part. When we talked about Meghan Markle, she's a Sun in Leo. Maybe the fact that she's a Sun in Leo with conjunct Mercury in Leo, that sort of didn't help her acting career, because maybe she found it a bit difficult to just blend in and just get into the role. And we saw that when she tried to interview, when she did those interviews, was it for Spotify? A criticism was that she didn't give the other person space. And if you're an actor, you've got to give the role space. You're making space for this part. And I suppose if he's got Sun in Cancer, a water sign, trine Jupiter, trine Neptune, that means he can perhaps mold himself onto the part that he's trying to play, even if he does have a high opinion of himself, perhaps with that moon in Leo. I don't have a time chart. So could I answer the question, is he an egocentric control freak? I could read a biography of him, I could read about him, but I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to look at his chart. All I know is that he's an actor, he's a successful actor, and he's into Scientology, and I think we see some of that. I think he's got a better chart than I have. And it's Jupiter in Pisces, trine his Sun it's Jupiter is in its own sign in Pisces, and Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, so that gives a good relationship between the Sun and Jupiter. And sometimes Jupiter can be about religion. I was talking yesterday about Sinead O'Connor, and she has a mutual reception. She had a mutual reception between the Sun and Jupiter, because she had the Sun in Sagittarius, which is a sign ruled by Jupiter, and she had Jupiter in Leo, a sign ruled by the Sun. So you very much saw her strong Jupiter was reflected in her concerns about religion. And so maybe in his case, this strong Jupiter relates to his how he's molded himself onto Scientology. And one final point. Scientology as a religion was founded by L. Ron Hubbard. And here is just want to quickly look at L. Ron Hubbard's chart. L. Ron Hubbard had a somewhat wide grand trine in water signs between the Sun in Pisces, Jupiter in Scorpio, and Neptune in Cancer. So this Jupiter, I mean, I know it's a bit wide. The Sun is sort of 7 degrees off the trine to Jupiter. So L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology, had a grand trine in water. Jupiter in Scorpio, trine trine Sun and Mercury in Pisces, trine Neptune in Cancer. And Tom Cruise, like L. Ron Hubbard, has a Jupiter, Neptune, Sun grand trine. So there is a connection there between Tom Cruise and the founder of the religion that he's involved in. So that's all I'm going to say for today, and I will talk to you tomorrow.